Hello, welcome once again to the hopefully new and improved Enchanted Kingdom of Hermione. I'm the Lord Chamberlain, Zipgun, and I'm here in the Turret of Pleasure where we're working on a new camera system, which I'm having insane problems figuring out because I'm a dimwit. But we're gonna try and make it work, and we're gonna try and make it work doing another episode of I Am That Sucker. And I haven't been a sucker for a while. I hadn't bought anything really ostentatious. But then I found and reviewed recently the Jethro Tull stand-up box. And I enjoyed it so much that I found out that the next album of theirs, Benefit, which is also a real favorite of mine, was also available in a similar box. And because I was so impressed with the last one, I said, how much is it? $50. Okay, $55 or something. Canadian. And so I ordered it through the Satan Amazon and then found it in my local record store for the same price. Shame on me. Oh well. I made up for it later, but that's another story. So there, I went and bought it. This is the Anniversary Enhanced Edition. I can't remember what they called the stand-up. It wasn't enhanced. Enriched, perhaps? And it's more of the same kind of thing. What you have with these is you have the completely remixed Steven Wilson remix of the album. These remixes are very faithful to the originals, but they're better. They're clearer, they're crisper, they're a little sharper. I don't know what he does, some kind of pixie dust. This record, it sort of gets a bad rap. I remember them playing at the Pacific Coliseum in Vancouver on the tour to support this record. And the legend, and I should check this out because I haven't checked with anybody, but the legend was that they started a riot. And I can well imagine they did, because this was when Jethro Tull were literally just skyrocketing to the top. And they were like, again, you have to remember, this is 1970 by this point. 70. And so they were really cooking. They'd been playing live. This lineup, which was the second lineup, first lineup with Mick Abrams had not lasted very long, maybe a year. And he decided he wanted to play more blues. Tull decided they wanted to play more other stuff. So they parted ways. They hired Martin Barr after a brief stint with Mr. Tony Iommi on guitar, which didn't last. And they did the stand-up record, which, in my opinion, is just A+. Brilliant record. When I was a kid, when I was 10, I couldn't find much different between them and Black Sabbath, other than the crazy flute player. And he looked pretty crazy. Like, you gotta remember, one thing sort of dawned on me. These guys, in 1969, these guys were hairy. They looked like real freaks. They looked dangerous. Now, of course, they were anything but. They were the most polite British lads you could want. Ian Anderson was like a non-drug taking, relatively teetotaling, he was just Mr. All Business. And really nobody in Tull was much of a party animal, although it was said that bassist Glenn Cornick liked to party on the road. But I think that was sort of overstated. They also didn't like this cover. I thought this cover was great. I have a real great memory of this. I used to hang out at a record store in the Law Chambers in Market Square. Bastion Square, sorry. In Victoria, the old tourist section, and there was a hippie record store upstairs, and they had a cardboard promo thing of this that you would put in the corner of your store. And the cardboard, these things actually stuck out. It would be worth $100 to a collector today. And I had it for years, and I think it was my friend Simon Hopper. I think I gave it to him because he was a big Jethro Tull fan. Hi, Simon. And we boogied to the stuff together. So what do you have? You have the original mix, or sorry, the remix, if you will. You also have associated recordings. Now these are important because back then they were still making singles, and back then the British didn't put the singles on the albums And there is some neat stuff. Now, I heard this record when it came out, 1970, and I had no idea that there was a UK single version of the song Teacher, which is really different, and it's really cool. I really like it. And I didn't know anything about Sweet Dream. I'd never heard the song 17, which I really like. It's a weird song. It goes on forever. And he actually says it was meant to be like this boring song. Or not boring, but a song that sort of just rolled and rolled and rolled. Yeah, so disc 2, the associated recordings. You get the original single mixes of Singing All Day and Sweet Dream. Very hard, never available in North America to my knowledge. Certainly not in my circles. You get the mono single mixes of 17, which is promised both the teachers, because the US album version, looks like you get a mono mix of that too. Inside, Alive and Well, and Living In, A Time for Everything. What else do we have here? We have 1970 stereo single mixes. Now, I haven't bothered to figure out how different these are. Like the Teacher US album version, how different is that from the... Oh, I guess... Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, okay. No, there's US album version on the original. Okay, so I guess these are the original mixes. Anyway, I can't imagine there's much difference. Singing All Day, Sweet Dream, Teacher, US album version, and at the end of this, tantalizingly, and they do this on all these, I love it, 2 radio spots, courtesy of Stan Cornin and his creative services people at Warner Brothers, who made a lot of really, these are weird, they're supposed to be funny, and they're not really very funny, but in the context of 1970, to hear these on the radio would have been weird. And they kind of signaled to the listener that, you know, we're hip. We know what's going on. They worked like a hot damn. Warner's was famous for their promotions. And one wonders what Ian Anderson thought of these. Okay, disc 3 CD is Live at Tanglewood. Now, Live at Tanglewood, and disc 4 is Live in Chicago. Now, Tanglewood was, in fact, filmed, although the end of it isn't, it seems they ran out of film or something. But at any rate, so what they've given you on this is they give you the CD of Live at Tanglewood, stereo, Steven Wilson stereo remix. So they had pretty good audio of this. And they had camera shoots. So DVD 2 of this is the 70 Tanglewood concert on video with Steven Wilson's 2020 audio remix in DTS and Dolby 5.1. So that's pretty cool. You get a 1970 concert in 5.1 surround. Wonderful. And it's good. It is very typical of their gigs at the time. The guitar instrumental is not very good, sadly. It's kind of just Martin Barr showing off what a good guitar player is. And there's Dharma for One. Now, Dharma for One is on this, and it's also on the Live in Chicago 1970 CD, which is a mono mix taken from the front of house desk by Jethro Tull sound engineer John Burns, who worked for them for years, and it's nice that it's there. We don't really need it. I mean, guess what? There's another Dharma for One. Now, I think I mentioned on somewhere that Dharma for One live, the last time I ran into it, I think was on Stand Up. The drum solo was longer than some gigs I've attended. The 2 drum solos in these concerts are actually longer, one of which is so long that they managed to squeeze it onto the DVD, but on the CD they had to edit it out because it would have made the CD too long. And Anderson very humorously mentions how sometimes Clive would lose track of time during these sequences. But having said that, this gives you all you need of what Tull was like to see live in what was, in my opinion, their peak. Glenn Cornick on bass. At the end of these tours, Cornick was fired, basically. It's sort of murky as to why. I'm not, I still think that maybe he was just a bit too much of a focal point for the band. He was certainly the second most photogenic guy If you look at that picture, you got Clive. Well, he's stuck behind the drums. Martin Barr was what we like to call in the biz a mummy. He would just stand there and play. Anderson, of course, was insane, animated, jumping around, standing on one leg. But Cornick he had the headband and the glasses. He looked like a flower child. And Anderson hated the whole flower child thing. So I got a feeling, and he also liked to have a few bevies on the road. Although I don't think he was out of control or anything. Anyway, one thing led to another, and he was kind of fired in not the greatest way. They kind of just didn't get him on the plane home. and that was the end of Jethro Tull Mark II. In my opinion, the best mark of Jethro Tull. The writing here is almost as good as Stand Up. I don't think Stand Up really has a dud song on it. This one, well, the funny thing is, they're doing the British. They're doing the British version. So song number 3 is Alive and Well and Living In, which was not what it was in North America. That was Teacher. And Teacher is a much better song than Alive and Well and Living In, which is a little bit of a make-weight, perhaps. But there's a couple of songs on here, like I really love the song Inside. Just swings along. With You There to Help Me is great. Nothing to Say is great. Most of this is great. Saucity or a Woman, sometimes. Again, the book. Now this, like I said, this was $50. So you've got 4 CDs, 2 DVDs. Not bad. $8 a disc. But you get this book, and if you're like me, and you're a bit of a nerd for detail, this is great, because what you basically have here is about a 100-page book full of stuff for nerds, including reminiscences by band members, a great little section where Anderson recounts each song, and he's very frank about some of them. Some of them are better than others, which is really refreshing. I like it. He comes across, people seem to think he's an unlikable guy. I'm not getting that out of my recent sort of dive back into Tull. He's not an idiot. He never did drugs. So he was very much a craftsman. But he really was, this is when he was really figuring out his craft. And this record, once he got rid of Cornick, that was it. He was the boss. You'll notice this record and the record before have a photograph of the full band on the cover. That never happened again in Jethro Tull's history. After this, Aqualung was a painting of what was obviously meant to be Ian Anderson. He claims he didn't want that. Okay, fair enough, but that was just Ian Anderson. You had to open the sleeve to see the band. Passion Play was nobody on the cover, and same with Thick as a Brick. But then you went to War Child, he was on the cover. Too Old to Rock and Roll, he was on the cover. Heavy Horses, he's on the cover. Songs from the Wood, he's on the cover. Stormwatch, he's on the cover, a cartoon form, and so on and so forth. From this point on, it's Ian Anderson's band. For better or for worse. Sometimes it was fantastic. We'll get to that on another day. But again, I can't find fault with this. I'm not crazy about this layout, and I'm really not crazy about these little pocket things for the DVDs. There's not really a lot I can do. I could maybe try to find some sleeves, but really all you can do is just take real care getting stuff. These you got to be careful getting them out. Otherwise, if you break them, it's a world of shit, and you don't want to do that. They're finicky. They're great when they work. They're terrible when they're broken. I find stuff like this in the thrift store, and they're all busted up. And it's like, ugh, drives me nuts. Great book, yeah. Good value. Everything about this. I love the size. It fits in the rack. You'll notice it'll fit right in there on top of the other stuff. And I'm going to give it 95%. There's almost nothing about this I don't like, including the price. The price was quite reasonable. The stand-up was for two discs and 2 DVDs, and it was about $80. And that's not unreasonable for what you get. Again, you get a whole book with this. Though these two combined is a very, very good history of the Mark II Jethro Tull in book form, as well as having all the material. So it's the last word. You can't possibly want anything better. I would give it my highest recommendation. I've really been enjoying this. I haven't thought about these guys in a long time, and I think what triggered me was they have a new record out called Curious Ruminant. Yep, that's true. And I'm going to bet that's not a very good record, but they were, in their time, they were one of the first rock bands. Like in 1960, at the dawn of 1969, when this band gelled, Martin Barr started to play with them, they didn't sound like anything else from 1969. And their sound didn't change that much, but the sound of everybody else really did. It really morphed. So these guys were just a bit ahead of the pack, and they got big very, very fast. Within a year, they were #1 in England, after having a single released under the name of Jethro Tull, because somebody didn't like their name at the record company. So, they shot to stardom. And they're still working. I think they're still touring. And good for Ian Anderson. He's a smart guy. He's made a body of work to be proud of. And I was delighted to buy this. So there you have it. Thank you so much for watching. I'm sitting here enjoying a delicious peel-out beer from Bad Dog Brewery up in the Sticks and Souk, and they make a darn good ale, and so I'm going to give them a shout-out because they're great people and they make fabulous beer. And I'm just sitting here watching the world go by on this starting to get sunny spring day. It's rained for 4 straight days, so there you go. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like and add this to your notifications list, and we'll be seeing you with other silly stuff at some point in the future. Take care of each other. Don't freak out over what's going on in the world. It will pass. Take it easy.